Welcome to this second installment of the restoration of this Sears 42-inch scissor deck. If you didn't watch that first video, go back and you might see how we took off the belt cover and started working on it. Started cleaning this up. Since that last video, we took out a lot of the excess grease and things. Took off this belt guard that goes inside underneath the belt cover. It's in here kind of tight, as you perhaps can see. Sets right there, and you see how it's a belt guard. This side of the deck, it was a little hard to see because it was getting late when I filmed the last session. You can see this side was all gummed up and just pieces of belt here. I was talking to my buddy, Gardening Preacher, the one I got this deck from, and he said that's because this tight tolerance, that when a belt gets a cut or a little wear place in it, it's going to start accumulating here because there are more places for it to hit, and that makes a lot of sense to me also. One of the reasons I'm doing this series of videos is so I can make sure I know how everything goes back together. One little tip when you're doing something like this, when you are working on a project like this with pulleys and belts and other things, take video, take plenty of pictures, whatever you need to remind yourself as you go to put it back together. And that's one thing that I'm doing. Now I'm going to take this spring out. We're going to see how good it is. We're going to take everything off this deck, all the mandrels, these 3 mandrels, and all the other bolts, so we can get down to the deck body itself, so we can take the rust out, use rust converter, sand, prime, fill if need be, weld if need be. And I don't think there's any places on the deck body itself that will need to be welded, and so just stay tuned. And I'm going to work a little bit more, take out one of these mandrels, and then I'll show you what that looks like when they come out, so stay tuned. Notice how this spring was oriented. This side came up through, and this side went down into this little hole here on the deck. I do that partially just to show myself, so when I put it back together, I'll put it back in the right way. Okay, as I removed this pulley that's set just a moment ago right here and was attached with this spring, this tensioner pulley inside, I want to show you how this goes. Very simple design. Again, we see carriage bolt, and we see that hole right there. And this bolt just came up through very simply, came up through the center of this bushing, and then it had a washer and a nut on the top. And then this is the bolt that came up through the belt cover. Part of it that comes up through the belt cover to where the belt guard itself bolts on. And so you just might recognize that's how that comes off. Just very simply, you start taking that nut off, put your hand underneath, and make sure that the square section of this carriage bolt comes up through the square corresponding hole in the deck. Okay, I've taken the mandrel out. You see that the hole in the deck corresponds to the shape of the mandrel, and you see these fit kind of tightly, and you have to just work those right out. Pretty easy. Orient those properly, take those out. You can see the grease fitting there on the side. This mandrel is in really good shape, doesn't feel rough, feels nice and smooth. And just very simply, again, we have 4 little carriage bolts that come up through, and they come out just very easily. Of course, bolts such as this are out of the weather and typically get grease on them. You know, when you're putting grease into these bearings and these mandrels, it'll push out after you get too much in it. And where's it going to go? Well, it's going to go up in here, and that's why you see all the grease that was underneath. All right, I'm going to take the rest of the mandrels out of this deck, take these hanging pieces for the scissor arms and the apparatus off, and I'll get back with you just as soon as the deck is stripped down to just a bare deck, and then we'll move from there. Okay, also of notice, these brackets slant toward the front of the deck. So you want to keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that the bolts are on the inside of the brackets, and that's the way it is on both sides. Also, these are 9/16. These are also carriage bolts. See, they're a little bit bigger. These hold the front weight of the deck, and so this is a little beefier with the 9/16 nut. That is the wrench, not that it's a 9/16 bolt, but 9/16 wrench for these. Everything else on the deck so far has been 1/2 inch. All these are 1/2 inch. Now, the 1/2 inch bolts around this center mandrel I'm going to have to use a wrench on because it's really hard to get socket in there. Also, of course, the bolts that bolt the blades on, they're a 5/8 wrench. And that's the way it is with just about everything that I'm aware of. My Toro mower and other mowers are typically 5/8 when you go to take the blade off. Okay, welcome back. It's the next afternoon. It got a little dark on me last night. Got all 3 of these mandrels out. They're all in really good shape. Now what I want to take off are the scissor arms. And these bolts here are a 9/16 socket or wrench. Need to take those off. I don't know how that sun is affecting the camera, but hopefully you can see good enough. I'm going to start taking this off. Once I get off all of this, it'll be pretty much stripped down. Got some more work to do underneath. Okay, I'm having a little trouble here with the back side of this. These bolts, the nuts are backing off so far, and then they're just spinning. Now, I did get 3 of them out, and I don't know if it's stripped the square hole in the deck or not. Also, we want to keep in mind this little piece here. This piece here, of course, the center of this scissor arm apparatus right here. That piece right there goes in through that, and of course that adjusts the back height of the deck. Okay, welcome back. Almost have the deck completely disassembled. This is the piece underneath. Here's a bolt hole, there's a bolt hole, and around the edges there are holes where these bolt in. These bolts go down through. I'll clean that up. I want to take that off so I can get the deck completely sanded down. Something else I'm going to do, I already sanded off, ground off the back of these rivets, is I'm going to take off the Sears tag and try to preserve that the best that I can. I'm also going to get a tape measure here in a minute, and I'm going to measure how far these are from the edges. There's one here. There's also, it says rotary something there, but you can see where the old tag was. I'm going to measure that too, because I'm going to try to order these decals new, and that way the deck will look pretty good. Okay, in the name of being thorough, this piece comes under here on this corner, and the 2 bolts come out through these 2 holes here. Sets like this underneath, just in case I'm wondering where this piece goes when I reassemble it, or where it goes when you reassemble your deck. Okay, you can see we're at 8 inches and 11 1/4. Yeah, we'll call it 11 1/4, maybe 11 5/16. And then this way, if I can go right in the center of the arrow, which I'm trying to do, we're talking about 2 3/8. Yeah, 5 3/4. The piece itself, about 3 3/8 by 3 3/8. Okay, let's look at This piece here, this looks to be pretty much just centered on this side and about an inch from here. I don't know what that whole sticker said. We'll figure that out in a little bit. Alright, I'm going to pull those rivets out of that tag there, that Sears tag, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, welcome back, guys. The deck under the belt cover is a little worse than I thought. You might be able to see how it's pitted there pretty bad. I'll grind that out and rust convert that. Maybe fill it with a little bit of JB weld. A little bit in there, not too bad. The worst part of the deck, I didn't see this, is there's a rust hole right here and a little one there beside it. So what am I to do with that? Well, I could fill it probably with a little JB weld or something, but I might cut that out and get somebody to weld a piece in, or clean that up really well and put a little patch maybe underneath, weld it, and then JB weld the top. I could do that. It's not a major thing. This isn't an old muscle car or something. It's just a mowing deck. But if I'm going to paint it and fix it up, I want it to be right. I don't want to just do shoddy work. Underneath looks pretty good. I mean, it's obviously a lot of surface rust, and some just a little deeper than that, but not bad at all. Took me about, I'm going to say 2 hours to strip this deck, all the parts off this deck. What I intend to do is clean it up, patch the bad spot, and prime the whole thing with rust converting paint. After I do that, put a good primer on it, sand it, and fill any places I need to fill with JB weld. Now, I'm not talking about filling holes. I'm talking about just some rough spots, maybe where somebody may use Bondo on a car body or something. I'm going to use JB weld, and then I intend to paint the underside of this with undercoating, vehicle undercoating. And I'm going to do that before I, of course, paint the top. I'm going to paint the top with a Tractor Supply implement paint, Tractor Supply white, just pure white, classic white, whatever the name of that is. Well, thank you for watching, and stay tuned that you might see the rest of this deck. And next time we come together, I'll probably have had patched that hole. Not in a huge hurry. We're still in the month of January, but I want to get it all done and painted, so it may cure well and set up good before I use it this spring. Thank you for watching.